Hey everybody, welcome. This is Jason. Today we are doing a short workshop on slaving. It shouldn't be too difficult. It's actually really, from a technical standpoint, you're only changing two of the resources. But let's do a deep dive on slaving and have a look at it. So, okay, that's not the right place. I'm going to go ahead and open this object that I did from a previous workshop. I believe it was either simple object making or subsets, but it's just a simple gorilla sculpture, like so. It is recolorable and it's got one subset. So it looks something like this. And then if you go Tools, Object Tools, Scene Grapher, let's have a look at it now. So this is a very basic package structure with recolorable objects. So you can see at the top of your hierarchy, you have an MMAT. This is a material override. Essentially, it's telling your crest, hey, this material needs to be recolorable, make it happen. And then this is the crest, which coordinates all of the other resources in an object. So the MMAT, in addition to talking to the crest, it says this is the material that needs to be replaceable. And then from there, the TXMT talks to the texture. Okay, so in addition to saying be shiny or be semi-transparent, it advises which texture to apply on the object's shape. So if we go down from the crest, we have the shape, which essentially it says these are the parts of the objects. These parts are assigned to these materials or TXMT. And then if we go down from the shape, we have the geometric node or GMND, which it identifies which subsets from the GMDC are recolorable, and it does a few other things, but I won't dive too deeply into that because we'll get to that later. So then we have the GMDC. This is the actual physical presentation of the object. These are the mesh parts. Okay? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to clone this sculpture right quick so we have something to work with. And we'll make that about 1,000. Finish, and we're just going to call it Big Gorilla. Update. Okay. So now we just go to the GMDC and import. And if you're following along at home in the resource thread for this workshop, I have a file called Big Boy. It's essentially the gorilla, but I multiplied the scale by about 2, so it is twice the size of the original sculpture. And we're just going to replace that mesh. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do, but let's see what happens. Okay, so just as a demonstration, the one that still has the texture, that's the original gorilla sculpture, and the one that's blank, that's untextured, that's the big boy. So we go over here, and okay, we copy Why are you doing that? Oh, because it's such a huge, it's about 5,500 polys. So we just rename that, delete the original sculpture, and commit. So now let's click preview. So now this is the big gorilla sculpture. It's mapped exactly the same way as a small gorilla sculpture, so the texture that we have for it works. If you're slaving, for example, a chair cushion, a dining chair cushion to a couch, you might have to remap that object. But let's go ahead and save that. Now, to make this a unique object, we need to replace the GID. And the way that I do that is a little bit unique because I make so many objects. I have my own GID spreadsheet. So we just go down here, and this is going to be we just give it its own unique GID. Hop back over here. Oh, but when we do that, well, it's not going to matter because we're going to slave it. When we're making our own standalone object, we would check here to update the mmats and commit, so that it takes the mmat from the new object and not the object that you cloned from. Okay. So at this point, we have our own independent gorilla sculpture that is twice the size of the original gorilla. Are you with me so far? Okay, let's move on. Let's go back to the original sculpture, hop down to the shape, and we're just going to grab this line of text here, where it's pointing to the material definition. We paste that on our trusty notepad. Then we go back to the slaving tutorial. We go to sculpture. And instead of big gorilla, we're going to paste over so that it's referencing the TXMT from the original object. So this subset references this TXMT. We commit and we save. Okay, so that was part one. Now we need to go to the GMND. So in the GMND, you can see that there is not a block named material mesh names. So, well, let's check out design mode enabled. If you are slaving an object to another object, the two blocks that you should be concerned with are design mode enabled, TS design mode enabled, and TS materials mesh name. In this case, this has already been enabled for the previous object because it is recolorable, and it is linking to the subset that we want to make recolorable. So we don't need to do anything in this case, but if you're doing this on your own, you might need to change this. So now we hop over to edit blocks, and in our dropdown, we're looking for one in parentheses named C data list extension, just like that. And then we add the block. Okay. Hop back over to the content tab. And then in the content tab, we'll go to object graph node. This is for, make sure, also very important, make sure that you're doing this for the root block, the one that's 0 times 0. Then we hop over here And what we're doing here, basically, there are, let me see if you can, there are 5 blocks currently added, and 4 of them are enabled. If I were not to enable this correctly, if I were just to put it in my game as is, it would most likely crash to desktop because the scene graph for this one is broken. So what we need to do is enable and link the block that we added. So from the root block, the 0 times 0, we go to the C Object Graph Node tab, and we go Add. And then you can see these go in sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in the index, we want to go the next hex value up. So in this case, we just do a 5 on that. And we want to enable that. So we just backspace and 1, just like that. And then we commit that. So now the data list extension block that we added has been enabled. So we can go ahead and work with that. So we go to the 5 block in the dropdown. Then making sure that we're on the C extension, we go lowercase ts, uppercase M materials, uppercase M mesh, uppercase N name. And in this dropdown, in the bottom right corner, we want to go to string. And then we're adding a string. What was the name of our subset? It was sculpture. Okay, so now this is very important. We want to copy the name of the crest, which is before, in this case, before the first underscore. This has multiple underscores because you have the because it's set up like a Maxis object, so it has underscore subset name and then underscore material name. But for the purpose of this, we only need this name. So we paste the name of the crest in the block here, and we commit. Let's go ahead and save that. Understand what we've done up to this point. Essentially, we have bypassed, or we're not bypassed, but we're not referencing the local object scene graph anymore. We're referencing another object's crest and TXMT. So in this case, because we're no longer using the local resources, we just go to we just select the texture, the TXTR in the resource tree, and we can go ahead and delete that. Then we go to the MMAT, and again in the drop down, we just right click and delete. That's what I'm doing. I forgot to explain that. So then we go to the TXMT, and we do the same thing. So we're deleting the TXTR, the MMAT, and the TXMT from the slave object. And before I get too far ahead of myself, I just want to go back to the original object. And I want to make sure that okay, so see, this is the crest name. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing that correctly, because it has 2 separate underscores, so it might be referencing a different thing. But for GMND, you're always going with the name of the crest along with this hex code in front of it. Okay, it should work now. So we have eliminated the texture, the TXMT, and the MMAT. The TXMT and MMAT are not very big resources, but the TXTR can be huge, and especially if you have a whole set of objects you would need that are recolorable. You would, if you don't slave them, you would need to make individual recolors for every object, and that could take up a lot of space. Okay, so now let me hop up to my desktop. And let me rename this file here, as I mistyped that. Okay, so we grab those two. And okay, yes, I'm playing in the correct game. I have 4 different games, so I need to check which one loads. So we go to downloads and we go to story stuff. This is essentially my test folder. Just to double check. The original object is in Deco Sculpture and costs 14. And the slaved object is in Deco Sculpture and costs 1,000. Okay, let's fire up the game. So we go to the Bimode catalog. We go to Sculptures. The original should be around 14. There's the original. And that looks like the big boy. The big mesh, what it's doing is pulling the material from the small mesh. And if I had recolors on this, for example, that's recolorable. And that's recolorable as well. So if this were recolorable, then the big mesh will pull the same set of recolors as the small mesh. And that's pretty much it.